We're gonna teach you exactly how to train like an explosive athlete, and we're gonna start right now. One of the big factors that I wanna share with you quickly is that all of the athletes that were with me in Paris in this past year's Olympics, 3 of them weighed over 300 pounds and have a 35-inch vertical. Now, the way that we have to get towards that type of explosiveness is that we've got to dial in our specific ratios. And we're even going to talk about a specific weightlifter. And that weightlifter is Jake Horse. He jumped up these steps in 2 jumps. He had a 44-inch vertical. So the big question is, how do we have an athlete who is 70 kilos with a 44-inch vertical versus other athletes that are 300 pounds with 35-inch verticals? It all comes back to knowing the explosive athlete ratios. Okay, so these key ratios, we're gonna go into the ratios, then we're gonna give you a program. First one, I wanna see an athlete back squat, ideally 1.75 to 2 times body weight. Lighter athletes, 2 times body weight front squat. I know a lot of you will make excuses, but if you can double body weight front squat, you are going to be an explosive freak. If we have someone like Alex Rose, as you get a bit heavier, that's when it goes from that front squat down to the back squat. Ideally, still 2 times body weight will help you be explosive. Then we get into something like a clean. Okay, we should be able to clean 1.5 to 1.75 times body weight. Let's use Jake for an example. Jake was 70 kilos. He competed at 67. Okay, then he did compete at 73 at the end of his career. When he was at his best, he cleaned 170 kilos. He might have even hit 175, but he only weighed 70 kilos. Okay, so we're seeing where those percentages come into play with someone like Jake. And then finally, I like to look at explosive athletes with how strong they are and how explosive they are on a single leg. Okay, so we'll use a single leg squat, and we want to see that they can do 1.5 times to 1.75 times body weight for 3 to 5 reps on each leg on that single leg squat. Okay, so that's going to help increase their single leg broad jump, and it's going to help them if they are somebody like a basketball player jumping off of one leg consistently. We have to look at those lifts, clean, squats, front squats, single leg squats, and then also recognize that we need them to be good at broad jumps, hurdle hops, vertical jumps, single leg bounds. Okay, so that's where all this comes into play. Now we're gonna dive deep into the programming aspect that's gonna help you get to that point. First step, okay, it warms my little heart to see that the guy with the world record vertical jump, I think his name's Isaiah Rivera, does a lot of these. He does a lot of squats, a lot of front squats. He also weightlifts. He does movements like a snatch, a power clean. So my big recommendation, if you want to get more explosive, build out a program, okay? And this is something that you could even just go into Peak Strength. You head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store, the iOS store, you download Peak Strength, and then you select that you want to improve your explosiveness, okay? You want to train like a linebacker, you want to get more explosive. Now, you're going to get a program that's going to help you improve your weightlifting movements like a clean, while at the same time building out that big time squat. That's going to help build towards the ratios that we have developed. We use those ratios to identify key concepts and key points in our specific programming. And all these ratios are based off of our athletic freaks that we've taken to the Olympics, taken to world championships. So head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store, the Apple iOS store, download Peak Strength today. Now, what I recommend doing, if you haven't done a lot of weightlifting movements, spend 8 weeks pushing your back squat or pushing your front squat or pushing your single leg squat. Okay, and then during that 8 weeks, you get technical work done. You just do, technique on a clean. Maybe you're doing technique work at 60 kilos, nice and easy on cleans. You learn how to do a power snatch, or in this case, I'll demonstrate a hip power snatch. I think a hip power snatch above the knee, a high hang or a hip power snatch, is one of the best movements to help transfer that strength into bigger impulse expression. So get set, here, boom, okay? Come back down, boom, okay? Oh, now, 8 weeks building that squat, 8 weeks of learning the weightlifting technique, then we go into the next aspect to improve your explosiveness. Okay, so the next thing that we're gonna do, we're gonna focus on building through an 8-week time frame of contrast training. Okay, so remember, the beginning was you build up your back squat or your front squat, and you learn the technique on weightlifting movements. That's 6 to 8 weeks, okay? Try to do that. The next level would be, now we're gonna do contrast training. So I'm gonna demonstrate here. I'm gonna give you two different things that you could do. You could do a front squat or a back squat, okay? And we're gonna pair this with a jump, and I'm gonna teach you what we can do here. I wanna hit this for like a double to a triple, and I wanna be around 85 to 90% of my max, okay? So let's say we start at 85%. We want this to fatigue us very slightly. We wanna think about moving the weight as fast as possible, being stable, being rigid, and then resting for about anywhere from 90 seconds to 120 seconds. Okay, so we're gonna do this. Let's hit a front squat. Oh, come out here. Let's do a double. Okay, so even doing an unbroken double, like what I just did, can be really, really, really effective at getting you stronger. Now, let's pretend that I just rested for 120 seconds. I'm gonna come over here, and one thing that I like to do is I might even put a cone out there. I'm gonna do 2 broad jumps, okay? So let's say the first set, I measure where I get to. And then each set after that, we build up in weight on the squats, on the front squats or the back squats. And we also try to beat our mark on the broad jumps. So we'll come over here, I rest for a minute and a half, 2 minutes. I go here, boom, boom. Okay, so that's one way to get more explosive. Okay, that's the contrast stuff that we're talking about. So 8 weeks, build that back squat, build a weightlifting technique. 8 weeks of contrast work, and we could even do, this is something I really, really like to do with contrast training. It's a little harder, so we're gonna do a single leg squat. Pretend I have weight on the back of my shoulders. So let's get set here. 1, 2, 3, okay? So it wouldn't be too heavy because when we're doing single leg contrast work, you're doing double the work essentially. So let's say that's around 70%. Now we can go here and do simple pogo hops. One thing that I think is underrated in strength and conditioning is that we do all this talk about intensive, extensive, whatever that means. When we're talking about jumps, we're either talking about hops or jumps. So hops are low intensity, jumps are high intensity, like broad jump, hurdle hops. So most of your jumping should be at a lower intensity. And in this case, I'm gonna show you, in this contrast setting, we just hit those single leg squats at 70% for a triple on each leg. Now we're gonna do simple hops. So I'll go here, boom, 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 okay? 3 to 4 on the left, I'll come back. My right leg sucks, I'll do 3 to 4 on this. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, so try to do both legs. Obviously you have to do both legs, but try to do them thinking about a pogo hop. It's not as intense, okay? You're doing both legs, okay? So that's where we're gonna do that contrast training. We're gonna hit that contrast work for 8 weeks to become more explosive. Okay, going back to programming. I wanna talk about going back to the big dudes at the Olympics this year with crazy verts. Okay, Sam Mattis, insane vertical. Jake Horst, let's talk about him. That's 70K lifter who had a 44-inch vertical. One of the big aspects that we would do in their programming, especially with the big throwers, we would do a day 1 leg day. Okay, that would be a heavier leg lift. We would do a heavy clean or a heavy power snatch, something like that. And then a big squat session. That leads to a lot of explosiveness. But then on day 3 or on day 4, we would do that impulse day. That would be the speed lift, more dynamic strength. We've got to focus on moving weight fast. So we would do unbrokens. We would do pause front squats with an audible command. We could do a timed back squat. So you put on 315 on your back and you do it for a time set of 3, something like that. So the big programming aspect here, you could go 8 to 10 weeks of where you go, day 1 is heavy, you push the weight. Day 3 or day 4, that's gonna be the impulse day where you try to push the speed. Okay, that's gonna be a key factor. And then ultimately, what all of these athletes have in common, outside of being absolute freaks, is that they also had an athlete day. So we had a day that we did jumps. Okay, we still do this, where we have day 1, and then that day 3, if we're not lifting on day 3, then we would be lifting on day 4. Day 3 would be the athlete day where we're doing jumps. So again, we would try to get around 200 touches on the jumps. About 75 to 80% of that will be hop based. And then about 25% of that will be harder, more intense things like a hurdle hop or a broad jump or a single leg broad jump. So those are the big concepts, is that if we want to get to those ratios of back squatting 2 times body weight or front squatting 2 times body weight if you're a little bit lighter, and getting to that 1.75 times body weight clean, which is really heavy, at least get to 1.5, then 1.75 times, that has to take take a lot of time of being in the weight room and doing jumps at the same time. That's where the contrast training comes into play as well. So use all of these methods to increase your explosiveness. Head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store or the Apple iOS Store. You can get inside of our strength training app that's gonna help you become a freak athlete, because remember, freaks, if you wanna become a champion, you've always gotta cultivate your power. Peace.